any time you're expressing an idea to a camper or like generating a feeling in them, you're communicating with them. So of course talking to them would be in that, but if you like smile at them when they do something, or any sort of physical interaction could be communication. And so because of that, you have to make sure that nonverbal forms of communication are as positive as your verbal forms are.
One of the things we tell our leaders is that physically actually getting down on their level. You know, a kid's much shorter than you, and so whether that's crouching down or sitting down with them, and communicating to them where you're face to face, where you're parallel with them. But even beyond that, not only on the physical level, but also on, you know, little kids understand the world and look at the world differently than we do. And so the things a high schooler or a college student might care about aren't necessarily the same things a 5 or 10-year-old is going to care about. And so talking about things that they care about, whether that's games, toys, TV shows, things like that, talking to them about things that they care about, and also engaging with them in a way that they would understand, because they might think about or understand their relationship with their parents or their friends in a different way than you or I might understand or think about those relationships. And so I'm really trying to communicate with them in a way that they understand, rather than just expecting them to understand the way that we communicate and understand.
We want communication to come from a place of like really desiring to know what's going on. A lot of people are really good at asking kids questions, but not really good at actually listening to what kids respond to. And so showing a young person that you're paying attention to them by following up, by remembering things later on, those are things that build relationships and that allow for better communication later on. A lot of the things that we want our leaders to do in the context of camp is to set boundaries and in some cases discipline a kid, or give a kid correction, or even just give a kid instruction. And we want that to come out of relationship, not just out of authority. And so communication is a real key to that.
So interacting or communicating with campers definitely needs to be something that is building up, that like from the minute that they arrived at camp, that you're someone that really does care about them, that and in some senses doesn't treat them like a kid, like to where that you're their friend, but you're also someone who's an authority figure. So right when they're getting out of the car saying, hey, welcome to camp, that they begin to see this like, man, who is this person that, like, obviously they care about me or else they wouldn't welcome me to camp. And then as things go along through camp and going from games to the pool, that like, hey, we can't really do that, or hey, let's do this instead, or like, hey, like, how was chapel? Asking good questions.
Communication is the best tool we have for effective ministry and effective program, is because leaders spend the most time communicating with campers.
With that, there's this relationship that begins to form that's probably unlike a lot of other relationships that campers have in their lives, where it's other friends that are like, hey, like, you can be my friend, I'll be your friend, but someone who cares about them, asks them good questions, and like does have authority, but is also their friend. So.
The relationships that we want leaders to kind of build with campers are really centered around friendship. We want campers to feel appreciated and loved, first of all. But beyond friendship, we really want that love and that affection and that care and friendliness to come out of a position of authority. Because a lot of kids hopefully have some friends or somebody that they consider a friend, but they might not have an authority figure in their life that has been a friend to them along with that. So I think that's the goal.
It's like, here's someone you can trust, someone that will love you unconditionally, even if you are really acting out and not the best camper. It's one that you just kind of have to pour into them constantly. And so I'd say it's just that role model of Jesus that you're trying to portray in their life.
The goal of what we want our leaders to be for our campers is to be role models. And what I mean by that is that I really want a camper to be able to look to their leader how they handled a stressful situation or a crisis situation, and be able to look to how their leader handled that and say, that's how I want to do that. Whether that's if two kids get into a fight and the leader is able to just show a lot of love and grace and forgiveness as they discipline and handle that situation, or whether that's just their leader is playing a game with them and has a lot of fun and just really plays it at their level and they just feel loved in that way. So I want our leaders to be setting a good example for our campers of just how to live and how to be that kind of big brother or big sister example for them.
We desire for our leaders to be building personal relationships with campers, mostly where the leader is learning about the camper's life and asking them leading questions to develop a better understanding about the child's life.
Not just telling them what to do all the time, but asking what they're interested about, talking to them, actually being interested in what they're interested in. And then whenever you do have that situation where you have to tell them, hey, don't do this, or hey, we need to do this, then it's not so much you ordering them around, it's more of a friendly relationship and not just ordering them around.
It's a hard balance between being a friend and still yet a form of authority. So it's different from like a parent-child relationship as far as authority goes, but it's also different than like a sibling or just a peer, because you're there to be their friend, but also to help them have the best time possible, which sometimes does include having to step into that authoritative role.
The way it differs from a parent is that a parent is ultimately responsible for a kid. A parent has a long-lasting relationship, whereas a leader at camp has a short-term relationship.
I don't have as long to work with these kids, so I've got to be more careful that the things I say don't recommend my relationship in a way that I can't repair within the 48 hours.
We're not superseding or stepping in as a parent relationship. Even if in the case of a lot of our campers, there's a parent that's not in the child's life, or both parents not in the child's life, and even in that circumstance, it's not a parent relationship that's being established.
While we want them to have firm boundaries with the kids, those boundaries are going to be a little bit different than a parent's boundaries with the kids, because we don't know each kid's life experience, and we also don't have a place to say and do certain things with the kids because we're not their parent. Their parents have entrusted them to us, but we want to have the same boundary for every single child. But we also never want our leaders to give discipline just to show their power over the child, but for there to be that discipline is because of a lesson and because we want the child to grow.
I think that what that has to look like is being consistent and starting early with things. One of the things we train really hard on is that everyone at camp plays a role in communicating to campers what the boundaries are. So if you're not supposed to get on top of the swing set and like walk across the swing set, it's everybody's job to like tell kids not to do that. And if I'm a leader, or one of our leaders who's going around at camp sees something and doesn't do that, it kind of breaks the whole kind of fabric of what we want to have in terms of consistency.
It's a higher calling. It calls the leader in this example to a higher standard of how they're going to speak, how they're going to act, whereas peers, can get upset or get frustrated with each other and things like that, and just kind of act in a very human way towards each other. But a role model is called to a higher standard where they have to set the example and really, it's not that they can't make mistakes, but that mistakes mean a lot more. That if they were to mess up, they would need to be the first to come and apologize and ask for forgiveness, and again, be setting that example of what that looks like, and again, hopefully not making those kind of mistakes.
But we really instill in our leaders to be intentional in the way they're interacting with their campers and asking intentional questions and leading questions.
No matter what they do, you support them, you listen to them, you talk to them, you hear them out. Sometimes they have these subtle cries for help, and you're just like, you have to be like 100% into talking to them. Also, I think it's really easy if you're just a peer or buddy to just kind of blow them off sometimes. But in being a counselor, you have to be very focused on them and their needs, because something that we're reminded constantly, it's not about us, it's about them. And so it's just a short amount of time that we get with these kids. And so I guess for a parent, you know, you have them around all the time and you're just kind of like, oh yeah, nice. But when you're a counselor, it's like, this is the one job that you've been given this summer. You know, it's the one job that's a direct purpose. And so it's our direct calling to just love them and pour into them and just care for them.
I guess as a leader, you know, God's calling us to be leaders. In the positions that we're in now, we have the ability to share our stories about what we've learned about God or what God is doing in our lives, and we get to share the gospel and the truth. On that, it's just kind of allowing us to be a leader, more than just like a friend. We're leading them in the way that God wants them to be, and the way that God wants us to lead.
I think that the primary goal that we would want is for our kids to feel loved and our kids to feel served and nurtured, that they feel cared for and accepted at all times.
I'd have to say my main goal is to show them that they're loved. A lot of times they come and they are coming from broken homes, or they themselves are just so broken from things that just happened in their life. And so mine is to show them that there is someone out there who loves them.
I feel like the primary goal in interacting with campers is to show them that I love them, and by extension that God loves them.
We really tell our leaders and try to model ourselves that the love and grace and service that we give to not only people that are our subordinates, but also our peers and our own authority, is that our love and care and service for them is never based on their performance. It's never based on their action. It's never based on the way that they talk to us, that it's completely unconditional, that our love for them will be the same as a different kid, whether they disobey and that kid obeys, but that our love remains consistent.
For me, I want to build a relationship with them so that I can effectively share truth. And to do that, for them to actually listen to you, there usually has to be a relationship in place first for your word to mean anything to them.
My primary goal when communicating or talking with campers, building relationships with them, would have to be just helping them understand who Jesus is. Because as a Christian, you know, we're striving to be Christ-like. I feel like it's important as number one in our relationships with anybody, really, is to have that foundation of love and caring for them, and, you know, openness with them, and accepting and caring for them as Jesus loved us.
The benefit of camp is that it's a place where they're able to be open about the things they're struggling with, or open about the hardships at home. And so one of those things is we want them to feel like it's a safe place for them to be able to share, whether they get bullied at school, or whether they're in an abusive home, or whether just they have a new little brother or little sister that maybe it's hard to have a new family member. We want them to feel safe in sharing those things so that we can encourage them and teach them how to better handle the situations that they're in, and who to seek help from.
And I think that what that comes through, the kind of the method of that, is that we really do our best to kind of get to know kids on a personal, individualized level, not just a recitation of facts, although those are important, especially to a young person.
I think the best way to show campers that you love them is by taking the time to talk to them about them, let them know that you care about taking time, and like time is something you can't take back, and I think kids understand that if you spend time with someone, you care about them.
Yeah.
During training, we talk a lot about being in tune with your campers and being present, and like not just getting caught up in your own world, not just doing things for yourself, but having that mindset of there's people here that I'm trying to connect with and communicate with, and having that be your focus instead of whatever activity you're doing.
Asking questions, I think is really important, instead of going into the immediate like teacher mode of like just giving them information and expecting them to respond. But first drawing them out they are, and then from there slowly asking questions that lead in the direction you're trying to go.
So I think the way that we accomplish what we want to accomplish through communication at camp is, number one, we talk a lot about camp about enthusiasm. Just, a kid pulls up, hey, I'm really excited that you're here. I want, that's kind of step one is, again, the whole group, the whole team, but in each individual taking responsibility to be enthusiastic about wanting kids here. I think a lot of, whether it's camp or daycare or school or whatever, people don't act as if they want kids around. It's an intrusion. You're stepping into my day. We want that to be, the opposite of what's true here.
Being excited about the things that you're doing and that you're going to do, that you have to do, so that they don't go into it with the attitude of, we just have to do this, it's not going to be fun. Sometimes you having a good attitude helps them to have a good attitude, and when they still don't, like, if you know them, then if you've talked to them and you know what they enjoy, then you can approach it and be like, hey, I know you don't enjoy this, but we can point it from this perspective and make it more fun for you.
It's a little different. It'd be like a more upbeat version of just yourself. Like, you have to be enthusiastic whenever campers are going to be here. Because if you're just like, all right, guys, we're excited that you're here for camp. We're going to have a great week. I'd be like, guys, we're excited to have you here. We're going to have a great week at camp. And just doing that, that really sets them up, and then they're going to be like, okay, it is going to be a good week. But also, at the same time, if you're not a really over-the-top person, you don't need to try to be over the top, because that's not who you are. That's not you're just trying to be something that you're not. But bringing enthusiasm while you're still being yourself is really effective, and then that just kind of gets the whole group of kids to get more excited about things.
I personally start off with being kind of silly and fun. Some people aren't as comfortable with that, but I think it puts the kid at ease when they see that their leader is relaxed. Even if they think oh, this person's just crazy, they still think it's funny.
So we really want to train our staff in a very practical, very hands-on, very tangible ways that they can get to know a kid, and that they can communicate effectively with kids. So small things like remembering their name, calling them by their name, is something that's really, really important. It can be hard for a young person. They have 8 or 10 kids that they might be responsible for, but calling kids by name is really a big one in terms of just kind of establishing the type of things we want to, establish with them. Taking advantage of every opportunity to communicate and to have a conversation and to ask questions. Camp is a lot about program. When we talk about camp, we talk about these activities happen and these activities happen. But the real heart of camp kind of happens in between those things, as people are walking somewhere, as people are having a meal, as people are kind of just getting ready for bed, and some kids are brushing their teeth, and some kids are showering, and there's just an opportunity to have a conversation. I think that's where the real heart of things comes. And so a lot of it isn't so much how to communicate, because we want each young person who's on staff here to communicate out of who they are. We don't want to train a bunch of robots who interact the same way. We want to encourage them to communicate out of who they are, but we want to train them to recognize those opportunities. And so sometimes a kid asks a really moralistic question, like, why do I have to not call this person a name? Why do I have to go to chapel? Why do I have to go to these things? Sometimes a kid is asking a question that is kind of completely amoral, like, what kind of car do you drive? Do you have a job? Do you have a girlfriend? And those are opportunities to answer questions because the kid's just interested. And so you can use that, you can answer that yes or no. You can just answer, this is the type of car that I drive. Or you can use that as a way to get more information about yourself and then kind of turn a question back on them, because they're probably asking for a reason because they're interested. There's also questions that kids ask that are not challenging, but they're still kind of moral questions, where it's like, why did we hold open the door for somebody? You know, why did we clear somebody else's, you know, plate? That wasn't our plate. Why did we do that? And those are just identifiable, teachable moments that we have a chance to teach a kid, like, well, we're doing this because we want to be kind to people, or we're doing this because we want to look for opportunity to put others before ourselves. And those are types of questions that kids are often asking that I think give us a really great opportunity to communicate a lot of truth.
Eye contact and an attentive attitude is very important when they're telling you about things. And so not only listening in the moment, but then being able to remember details of either what they tell you or what they talk about, that then in a follow-up conversation you can bring back and you can remind them of, hey, you said you really like this game, let's play that game now. And so being attentive, I think, is one of the number one things, but then also little things like referring to them as your friend or introducing them to your other friends, things like that. Just little phrases, and you know, name recognition is a really important thing, and so remembering their name, calling them by name, those kind of things that let them know that you accept them and that you're bringing them into your group.
I'm trying to say, like, if I'm trying to explain like a Bible story to them, maybe like a parable or something, I try and turn it into a more modern type setting and try and relate to them that way, like something they would see or something they would know about in their day-to-day life. When it comes to also just like communication or like instructions on what they want to do, we usually try and tell like very simple instructions and not give them like a whole list of things to do. We'll give them like one point to do, that's good, give them another point, keep on going that way.
A lot of younger kids don't have excessively long attention spans, and so in the way that a young adult might be able to sit down and have a good conversation about something for an hour without doing anything else, sometimes a 10-year-old or 5-year-old can't do that. And so having those conversations while doing an activity, and so whether that's you're in your cabin and maybe you're playing a card game with your campers and talking to them while you're playing a card game, or whether that's while you're waiting in the lunch line talking to them about something. Trying to have those conversations while doing an activity tends to work best, because otherwise the campers can be distracted by things that are going on around them, or wanting to be somewhere else or do something.
And then when it comes to discipline, even if we're trying to like communicate why something is wrong, we want them to understand that we're just trying to, we're trying to protect them, the other campers, and then also still assure them that we still love them and we still care for them even though they got in trouble.
Also, I think having patience, I think, is really big as far as like your interaction in response to them. Pausing to think through every response you give them, so that's not in anger or frustration, I think is one of the biggest things. And when either myself or I've seen other leaders respond impatiently, it really has a huge effect on the child and their interaction and the way they view you. That can totally change the dynamic of your relationship for the rest of the week if you snap at them.
Try to remember what it was like to be a kid. Try to put yourself in their shoes. Think about older friends that you had, whether that was an older sibling, whether that was someone at church, someone at school, that was a few years above you, that interacted with you and was your friend. Think about the aspects of that person or that relationship that you admired or that you desired about that person, that you liked about that person, and try to be that person for this younger camper.
The first thing that I would tell a new leader, or that I would tell anyone in my life that wanted to communicate with people better, is to remember that it's not about you, to remember that it's not about what you want, it's not about what you can get from the relationship. Because if all of our leaders went into the relationship with kids thinking like, okay, what can I gain from this person? Or even if I did that, interacting with my authority figures or my leaders or even my friends, if I went into like, what can I get from this? Like, my friends aren't going to feel loved and accepted. They're going to feel used. They're going to feel like a burden to me, like they have to perform a certain way. But if we just remember that it's not about us and that it's about the person that we're interacting with, or it's about this child in front of us, and it's about their needs and their wants, and it's about what's best for them and how can I learn about them and not necessarily how can I share about myself. then that's gonna accomplish our goals of the child feeling loved and accepted and wanted here.
So many people fake that. So many people try to, do things and have methods or have a format or I have this list of questions I'm going to ask a kid, and that's going to prove, that I like them. I'm going to ask them these 20 questions. I'm going to get them from place to place. I tell our leaders every single day, you're not babysitters. You're not here to just get kids through the day. You're here to love on kids. And so looking for every opportunity to love kids, to nurture kids. Again, we believe that absolutely reflects the love of Christ. We believe it's the best way to get young people to understand that they are loved by us, and more importantly, loved by the Lord.
Josiah says this a lot, but I think I would say stay engaged with the kids. Always be around them, be talking to them, be doing the things they do, be caring about the things they care about.
There's so much value in being present. We take away cell phones, right, from campers and from our staff, and the real heart of that is just its presence, right? And it's 2017, and most young people, if they're a camper, aren't probably bothered by somebody being on their phone and talking to them in a way that somebody that's a couple generations older might. But it's still even that small sliver of a chance that a camper might feel like I'm not tuned in with them because I'm on my phone. Like, I don't want that to happen. And so just being present and caring about what people have to say.
Awesome.